Welcome all to the January 9th NBA Hardwood show. We got a 5-game NBA slate, and screw Mangone because we have someone who just won about $50K last night. You guessed it. It is Bryce Morrow, a.k.a. Third and Schlong, just absolutely shoving it dry with Donovan Edwards, with Blake Corum captain, and a kicker. An unreal team, Bryce. How was yesterday for you? How'd you celebrate? A little champagne?
No, we had drank a decent amount the previous 2 days. So I had one of my buddies over, and who's doing dry January. I think dry January is for losers. It's like if you had the in-out list, like dry January is definitely out. But I didn't have any celebratory drinks yesterday. Maybe I'll have one on the playback show tonight that I think we're doing. So might hop on there for a bit. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a build that made a ton of sense. Like looking back at the teams, like Saber, I just kind of go through and toss out teams I absolutely hate. And I talked about it in our Discord a little bit, like how I built it. But yeah, I was slightly over on the kickers. I was kind of over on all the super cheap guys as well. So yeah, it just kind of led to a lot of more quorum captain teams. I think I was actually under the field on him. I had 27% at captain, and he was 30. But I had more Edwards than some people did, which helped. Yeah, I mean, it was Edwards captain until the end. I played no Edwards captain, so I was need someone else to get in there to captain. It was way over in Washington skill players, especially Dunze and McMillan, just because I thought in a trailing script, and we had expected Michigan to win the game, that they can just rack up PPR points and get there easier. And the big thing was the team had 2 running backs from the same team, and which can easily happen with Michigan, and it had no quarterbacks. So that's what kind of made it only a 7 shop, I think, because it only left $700. It didn't leave a crazy amount of salary or anything. But 2 running backs from the same team with 1 at captain and no quarterbacks was a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I noticed it immediately because I ran double quarterback builds, and I looked up, I'm like, well, fair enough, no quarterback. I mean, hard to believe that J.J. McCarthy is a top 5 quarterback in that draft class. That is something that that is out in the year of 2024, is believing that J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback. But yeah, congrats again, and great job bringing up the playback. I completely forgot. A word on the street, that's not confirmed, but I heard that there might be quite a few league passes given away, NBA league pass subscriptions given away on the playback tonight at 9. I'll work on seeing if that's confirmed or not. But rumor has it, you guys join us. It's free to watch. You can watch it with Bryce, JSU, Big T, whoever, JBC probably hop on, Mangone might hop on. It's just a great time. You get to watch the games, sweat together, and there's a massive showdown tonight that has $200K prize pool on DraftKings, $50K up top as well. So make sure to hop in. We'll post a link on our Twitter too, playback.tv, I believe as it is. Mangone, how's your day? I mean, we spent a lot of time on the phone today talking about playoff best ball. And your most recent one, you were literally crying on the phone for 30 minutes straight, talking about you kept getting sniped.
I did complain one time to you on the phone. The rest I was driving around doing stuff. We were just talking about different strategies. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing playoff best ball since before playoffs got locked in, right? And I think it's really interesting. I like the DK format the most, and I'm enjoying it. I think the competition's super soft over there. So been grinding it out. We talk different strategies. And of course, we got NBA tonight, right? This is a really fun time. We don't have Thursday night football, but the next 4 days, we get a nice little NBA grind, and then we get into the playoffs, which it's just the whole weekend of football, right? I mean, once 4:30 Eastern hits, it's just football for the next, I don't know, basically 3 days. So I'm excited for it. Should be a lot of good games too, right? You don't have to sit back and watch Steelers Patriots or one of those ugly games. But I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for this NBA slate. I did the podcast last night with Bobby Hare. I thought we had some pretty good takes, and I think there's a lot of different things to discuss for this slate.
Yeah, it'll be a very interesting slate indeed. So one of the biggest news that we got last night, about yesterday, just Ja Morant out for the season. Obviously, we didn't account for that in the graphic, so Ja Morant is the player graphic, but apologize for that one. But you had him not play last game, and what happened, it was Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, and it was Luke Kennard who started in that backcourt. And then it was Tillman and Jackson Jr. But word on the street could be that Jackson Jr. might be trending towards out, might be trending toward in. I know AP posted a great piece of info in there too. Last game, you had Tillman play 3 minutes, and you had just an array of just mishmash rotation minutes for Santi Aldama, who's also doubtful tonight. Probably won't give it a go. Played 15 minutes. Biombo, 26 minutes off the bench. No idea what to expect from the Grizzlies, but we'll have a clear answer as time gets closer to lock on this 5-game slate. And that'll be the 4th game we get to, so we'll go game by game. And we'll go ahead and get started with the first one of the night. It is the Timberwolves against the Orlando Magic. So if you've been paying attention to the NBA, there's one thing that you probably have noted. Paolo Banchero is an absolute stud over the last 2 weeks, has been absolutely balling, and even took it up a notch once Franz Wagner went down with an injury. You have seen his usage just skyrocket. You have guys like Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony off the bench, and then Goga Badate with Wendell Carter Jr. has reclaimed that starting center role. And then just on the Wolves side of the ball, you do have just a collection of talent, and Anthony Edwards helming that talent. Bryce, I'll kick it to you first. Go ahead and give your take on the Wolves and Magic for tonight.
It's not like my favorite game of the slate, but I think it's one of the lowest owned games of the slate here. You got a super expensive Banchero kind of soaking up like so much of Orlando's production right now that, it kind of kills some of the value on like with the rest of it, like with Franz being out. So, I'll have some Banchero, but he's up to almost 10K on FanDuel, 8K or 9K on DraftKings. It's like he's like full stud price now. So, you need at least, 50, 55 from him in this type of matchup if he's going to be optimal. Definitely not a cash play for me here. Orlando is one of the better defensive teams. I don't love the Minnesota side of the ball, but I don't think it's going to take like tons to be over on Cat or Anthony Edwards. I think Banchero comes in higher owned than Anthony Edwards, and Edwards has just as much, if not more, upside than him here. So I kind of like being over on those two guys. The value plays in this game I don't really love. I'm expecting that I'm going to jam so much Memphis value that I'm just going to be able to be overweight on a lot of different studs. So I'm not going to reach for any of these guys that feel a little overpriced. I'll keep guys like Cole Anthony in my pool, Gobert will be in my pool, but I'm not making the cheap guys a priority here.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this game, it is definitely one of those where you just see it kind of falls flat on this slate. It's definitely the worst of the 5 games on the entire slate. You just look at up and down. I mean, both these teams are very good defensively. And you also have just some lackluster games from guys like Cat and Gobert that make it really tough to trust. But, Mangone, do you have a different take potentially here on this one? Or are you mostly just like, hey, these other 4 games are just that much better?
Yeah, I mean, part of me doesn't love this game just because I think some of the pricing, the game environment, it's hard to get there, but there are pieces to like, and there are better game spots to look at. But let's dive into it. So for one, all the expensive Timberwolves, does Cat have a ceiling at 7-7? Sure, he could easily do it, but I'm not excited about it, right? When you just think of other plays relative on the slate. So I'm not super excited about him. Gobert at 7-1, I don't need to get there. And Edwards, he can always do well. He's one of those just 9K studs that can crush. So if you got him, I wouldn't tell you it's a bad idea. Then when it comes to the cheap Timberwolves, there's just not much else to like, right? I'm okay fading Conley, Reed, McDaniels, all these guys. I don't think they're great plays. Orlando side of the ball, Banchero at 9K, it's definitely expensive. And the guy has been an absolute printer and crushing. I don't doubt that. I will say, this isn't the easiest matchup in the world, right? Obviously, you're going to have someone like McDaniels on the other side that can cause problems. The usage is there, so I don't want to ignore it completely. Another key thing on DraftKings I'll call out, Banchero is only power forward eligible, and it's a small thing, but when you have a lot more eligibility at positions like small forward and other spots, it just does go a long way. So the fact that he's only power forward eligible, I do think that does hurt him slightly. He's a stud that could get there, but I'm not dying to get to him. I don't mind Cole Anthony. If I had to pick a guy to basically be excited about of these mid-tier guards, it's probably Cole Anthony just because I know what his upside can be. And if they need some scoring, he's the guy that can fill the bucket and hit that ceiling performance. Goga gets a tough matchup against Gobert. He's fine, but again, I like other centers. I just don't think center going to the Magic is my favorite route on this slate. And then the real Magic guy that we should discuss, and I think he was someone that was going to have a lot of traction. I think he's getting some traction more on FanDuel, though, is Chuma Okeke, because the minutes he's playing, if you look at the minutes that he is getting, he's gotten the last 3 games, 27, 29, 38. They've had some injuries. This isn't a great matchup. And we have Memphis value that looks like it's going to be a little bit stronger now at this point at similar positions and prices and even cheaper. So I'm not dying to get to someone like Okeke, but I can understand the play, and I understand why it's in play on FanDuel. It feels more specific there than it does on a site like DraftKings.
Yeah, it's funny that you just mentioned it too. I mean, when you look at this Magic team, the minutes are going to pop off for a lot of these guys, and a big reason for that is that I think they played back-to-back overtime games. I know they went to overtime, back-to-back overtime games. So when's the last time you've seen that? They went to double OT against the Sacramento Kings. They went to OT against the Nuggets, and they went to OT against the Hawks. So maybe if you want free basketball, you bid for a 4 straight overtime in Orlando potentially. But there's a reason why these minutes look incredible for these Magic guys is because how many overtimes have they gotten? That being said, Banchero's minutes is just absurd. He played 40 in regulation last game, 45 total. It is absolutely insane what he's doing right now. And I think that this is the cheapest you're going to see him with Franz still out. I think this price pump goes up after this game. It's a super tough matchup for sure, but I think I'm with you guys. I'd have more interest just on the Orlando side. I think Goga is not the worst shout in the world, 5'7", but still, the minutes can be a little bit frustrating. They're always sub 30 for the most part, but Banchero is the clear one who's head and shoulders above everyone else. And then Anthony Edwards. I mean, this is the first time I think that we've seen Anthony Edwards have point guard eligibility. Not a huge deal as long as you got the shooting guard tag, but I did notice the point guard shooting guard on DraftKings. But yeah, I think this is the game where you're okay with the studs, but we're going to have a lot of other pieces in all these other games that we'll get to. And we have 4 other games to touch on. We'll go ahead and get into the second one. And real quick, if you guys aren't a member of Run Pure Sports, code New Year 15 or New Year gets you 15% off your first payment here at Run Pure Sports. We got everything covered. And don't forget, the NFL playoffs start this Saturday. As Mangone was mentioning, we have 3 straight days of NFL action after this weekend starts, and it should be a great time. Let's get into the second game, a game that really is incredible. I think that there's a case to be made about this one. And Mangone, I'm going to kick it to you here first. It is the Sacramento Kings against the Detroit Pistons. We've seen this Detroit Pistons lose their best player, Cade Cunningham. He is out for a few weeks, maybe a couple weeks, maybe just a week. But you're going to notice a new look Detroit Pistons team tonight, and it's a great spot, right? This is a pace-up matchup, and it could be a game where if you want to stack early, you could do it, right?
Yeah, I like this game. I want to get some exposure to it. Got to figure out the right way to do it, though. So for one, the Pistons are playing tighter rotations. I did also mention last night, I don't feel super confident in the Kings defense as of late. And because of that, teams, they go in ebbs and flows, right? You see LeBron very tilted. You see the Bucks right now tilted about how they're playing. The Kings defense hasn't been good. Sure, they've been winning games, but that's obviously needed their firepower on their offense to really help them get there. When you have a team like the Kings that's struggling defensively and they're on the road, even though Cade Cunningham might not be there, right? I still think the Pistons can make this a competitive game, right? Now, competitive game, sometimes you win by 15 in a competitive game, right? As long as De'Aaron Fox gets that full run. That's what I'm hoping for. I would love to be able to play De'Aaron Fox at lower ownership with the upside he has. I think there's some really interesting spend-up guards, another one that we'll get to in a little bit, but I think De'Aaron Fox is a really good tournament play. I also could make the case on a Sabonis at 10K. I don't think he's a bad tournament play. Malik Monk, the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about is, and I think this plays a little bit into the Fox factor too. If you don't get the fourth quarter run out of Malik Monk or Fox, like that is going to sink you, right? That is one thing to think about. And I'm thinking about it with Fox and Monk, but I think that's an important thing to mention with those guys. But I really like Fox as a contrarian tournament play. And then on the Pistons side of the ball, which I think that's the important thing to talk about here big time, is yesterday the question was how many Bucks, how many Celtics, right? That was a big conversation point. One of the big conversation points today seems like how many Pistons and then how many Grizzlies, right? It seems like that's the blend of teams that we're looking at. Not as strong as yesterday, but I think that's kind of the look that we're getting. And we have to make decisions on that. For me, Killian Hayes, I think it's clear he's just going to run the offense. He's going to start. I don't see it being Ivy with Sasser. I think that's going to be it. Good news is we'll have it at lock, right? We'll know. but I feel pretty confident it's going to be Hayes. I like Hayes and Ivy. They're the two best plays for me. You can make a case for Sasser just because, dude, he is 3.5K. But to be fair, this team has been playing a tighter rotation. One other thing that I think can hurt Sasser a ton is, let's say Killian Hayes or Ivy gets in foul trouble or plays poorly, you could see Alec Burks close the game out. I like Alec Burks. I think he's got a strong consideration for being a good play on this slate. You could also see Alec Burks play at the 3 at times too. That would not totally surprise me. I see someone just mentioned Kevin Knox in chat. One reason I think Alec Burks could play the 3 at times is you could throw Bogdanovich in at the 4 at times too. I think Bogdanovich is one of the safer plays, obviously more expensive than some of these options I mentioned, but I think Bogdanovich at 6'7" is a very safe option that you have to like. Only small forward eligible. I wish he had that power forward eligibility, but I think Bogdanovich is a good play. I'm not super excited about the other options in Kevin Knox, Livers, Thompson, Roden. There's so many different paths that these guys can cut into each other's minutes or get their minutes cut that I don't like the forwards as much on the Pistons unless it's Bogdanovich. And last guy to mention that I think is a really good play, he's pricey, but it's Jalen Duren. I think at the price of 7K, he has the ability to get you 40 or 50 DK points, right? I try to find these guys that have high upside performances and good opportunities. Going up against someone like Sabonis, could you worry about the foul trouble? Yes, but the ceiling is just too good to pass up on, in my opinion. So the way I kind of rank these Pistons, I think Bogdanovich and Hayes are like a 1A and 1B. They're not the same price. It's hard to kind of, give rankings on it, but like I'd say Hayes is one of the best values. Bogdanovich feels like that safe floor ceiling play. And then from there, I would say it's probably Ivy 2, Duren 3. And then I guess Sasser comes in at 5, but I'm really not super excited about these like fringe Pistons guys. I think there's a lot of risk to them. And based on their prices versus the Memphis values, I think you'd rather take the Memphis values at that 3 and 4K range rather than taking a chance on the 3 and 4K Pistons besides Killian Hayes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there. And, just one thing to note, too, we have a million picks that seemingly go into the Bets Picks chat. They're awesome to watch. And Showdown, Christine, and Draft Cheat both hammered the overs on a lot of Jalen Duren's props. And don't forget that we have, just tons of premium plays, 5 premium plays a day that JBC posts. One of those free ones tonight is, I believe, this has to be basketball. I guess football season's over, but Bryce, correct me if I'm wrong. Western Michigan -2.5 hasn't started yet, right? Starts later tonight.
Yeah, all 5. I think the first one starts at 7, unless my timing was off. I played them earlier. It was 4 college basketball and 1 hockey.
Perfect. Yep. And Western Michigan -2.5, a free college basketball bet, one of the premium plays for tonight. And don't forget, we have tons of props and other stuff here in the Discord, and a good time ahead of us. But Bryce, when we look at this Pistons game, right? I think people might associate this Pistons team being terrible, right? But you almost have a little bit of the Ewing theory in effect, which if you're not familiar with the Ewing theory, it's a team plays a little bit better without their best player. And this has been a team that has been stale for about 3 months of play since the NBA season actually started. Do you think they can keep it close? And if so, who are your favorite spots on each side of the ball?
I really have no idea if they can keep it close, just being honest. But I think the way that you have to play like a blowout it's only an 11-point spread on a 5-game slate. It's not like it's a massive slate with tons of options to choose from. The Pistons guys can get there, like even if they get blown out, just because they're all so cheap for the most part outside of Duren and Bog. Ivy's up there as well, but yeah, it's not like any of them break the bank. It's a good total. It's the highest total on the slate with the team missing its best player. Like, there are going to be some good plays on this side of the ball. Hate to say it, I agree with Mangone. I like Hayes the best of the bunch here. I think Cunningham out impacts him more than any of these other guys. I like Ivy a little more than him, I think. I know he's a little bit more expensive, but it's still a young team that should, in theory, especially be looking to develop like these younger guys in these type of situations. Alec Burks, I don't get as excited about. Like, I think, like, I'm not going to eliminate him from my pool or anything, but I think I have him for like 24 minutes. It doesn't pop a ton. I like Durant and Bog as spend up or as like really solid mid-tier options. I think the one cheap guy here, if I had to go with one, I mean, it's probably like cheap. I would consider like super cheap here, like cheaper than Hayes. So Livers and Sasser pop a bit. Sasser, I'm less excited about than Livers. I don't love either of them and would rather take more shots on Memphis and like jam like what I would consider like the better Pistons plays here. Moving to the other side of the ball, I think it's a little bit tougher of a matchup for Sabonis than it is for Fox here going up against Durant. That being said, those are two guys I want to be over on. I think they might go under the radar here just because of the blowout risk. Like people, I think, take into account blowout risk too much, in GPPs especially. So Fox, I definitely want to be over on. He's projecting for like 5% ownership. Like I'm assuming I should get to around at least 10% Fox, I would think. Sabonis, probably a little bit less. I'll probably be around the field on him. Monk and Herter are the other two guys that kind of interest me for Sacramento. Monk can get there in a blowout if that's something you're worried about. Herter, he's just super cheap. If he starts hitting some three balls at 4.4K, I know the minutes have been awful, but he can pay off 4.4K in 26 minutes or whatever. So, if he was more expensive, that's more of a price play. But yeah, I think the game outside of like some of these Detroit plays goes a little more overlooked than it should.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing to note too, Kevin Huerter might actually get the start tonight. It just shows you what Mike Brown thinks of this Detroit backcourt. When you're starting Killian Hayes, he can throw out Kevin Huerter out there. Doesn't need a defender out there for the most part. But I will say, Killian Hayes, yes, I think someone mentioned it. You do not want you never want your day rested on the shoulders of Killian Hayes. You're absolutely right, but you got to look at opportunity. Opportunity outweighs talent on DFS, and he's going to get a lot of it tonight. If you do think that Killian Hayes plays like garbage, Sasser is a direct leverage play. You get different. Sasser has the ability to get hot. We have seen at times where Monty rides the hot hand in the backcourt. Like, what if Sasser just kind of comes out firing, gets 13, 14 first half minutes? It's a tournament path there. There was also a comment about, Bogdanovich's minutes are a little bit scary. I mean, it's always going to be scary when you keep getting blown out and you can never get a consistent look at like what the rotation's like. But there is no doubt that Bogdanovich is the best player on this team. Now that Cade Cunningham's sidelined. Yeah, Cade Cunningham's clearly the best, but Bojan is the best offensive player on this team. Duren's going to be the second guy, but Bojan's going to be able to create his own shot. It's going to be a pace-up environment. It doesn't look like he's projected for much ownership at all. So I do think that if you wanted to kind of get a little bit more talent from the Pistons side and you wanted to dive into this mid-range, I think that's a good idea. Ivy's great. It's just an overall good game, and I don't mind stacking it all the way up. It's got like almost a 240 total, and I actually think it sails over that. I just don't think that this Kings team has done enough to convince me that they're just going to mop up the floor or whatever. I mean, they're a bang average team, and they have been for the last year and a half. But luckily they made the playoffs at one time. Let's go to Blazers and the New York Knicks. This game has a little bit of sneaky upside. Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, Isaiah Hartenstein are all projecting the best in this one. Hartenstein has quietly been a 40-plus machine almost. Like, the dude has been absolutely killing it. Gets a ton of stocks, steals, blocks, anything that you ask for. Hartenstein is literally the lefty Jokic. But speaking of two other lefties, Brunson and Randle are two guys who really project well in that 9K range. 8.9 for Randle, 9.1 for Brunson. And then on the Blazers side of the ball, there's only one play that's really hopping off the page, and that is Anthony Simons. So with a game like this, Bryce, is this a game where you're just kind of trying to get over on these three New York pieces and then kind of just staying away, or what are you doing with it?
I'll touch on Portland real quick. It's just a really shitty matchup for all of them. I do love Simons here. The game plays much better towards him than like someone like Grant, who's super reliant on like counting stats. Simply because Simons can get hot. This new look Knicks team after the trade, has been a spot that I've been targeting and am going to continue to target here. especially on like Hartenstein is so much cheaper on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. Like no one's going to play him on FanDuel, so I actually think he's like kind of a better play there just because he's so absurdly expensive. Like he can still get there at 7.8 with the stocks. So like I'll definitely have him on DraftKings as well. I just think that's something to note. You don't normally see that big of pricing gaps. Randall, I always like on DraftKings. He just plays so well to their scoring. Brunson, I think, is a very solid matchup here. Josh Hart, one guy that I've been completely over on here, and it hasn't really worked out since the start, is I've been over OG Anunoby every slate since he's been on the Knicks, and I'm going to continue to try and be overweight here. I think people are kind of getting tired of him, and I think his long-term role is going to be better than what people think. Like here, I'm seeing him at like 1%. So, I'll probably be at least 10% OG today. He's probably one of my favorite leverage plays in this spot.
Yeah, OG, I'm glad you mentioned it because I just looked at it. Mangone and I were talking about underdog. I've been playing a lot of underdogs drafting system where you place rankings on players basically. And I have a ton of OG Anunoby for the fourth straight time. When the Knicks are playing, I get a ton of OG Anunoby. And the biggest reason for him is that he can get stocks in a minute and he can also just be a 3D guy. But he's also cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, which matters. And I just think that, a guy who can get a ton of stocks, that can definitely be a better player over there too. But overall, I do love the upside. Mangone, when you look at this game here, are you kind of on the same page as Bryce or anything different?
Yeah, I had my underdog stuff up and I just looked. I have 1.6, so I don't have a lot of OG, but I think he's good in this spot. Like I'm with Bryce on like, I remember looking at OG today and I was like, do I click him today? Do I have the fatigue? I think another reason why people are not playing OG is when you look at constructions, and I feel like I've talked about this a lot lately on the shows, is forwards. I just kind of key in on some forwards that I think are pretty safe and I'm not worried about. I think everyone is just saying, give me Vince Williams Jr., give me Zaire Williams, and like give me Desmond Bane, right? Like there's certain forwards everyone's gravitating towards, right? And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it. I'm just saying like this is a fact. This is why OG Anunoby's ownership is going to be low. I agree too on a site like FanDuel where the stocks are important. I think OG is really good in a matchup against a team like the Portland Trailblazers who can get turnovers in a hurry. I mean, OG could have 3 steals in 3 minutes with guys like Scoot Henderson on the floor, right? So I do think that the route with OG makes sense because it's going to be different from the field. While everyone's going down or they're going way up at their forward position, which some people are spending up at forward as well, or guys like Anthony Davis, I just think that middle range is kind of a dead zone where you can make the argument that, hey, it's just a contrarian, unique build, and OG could certainly get there. So I don't mind OG. I don't really like anyone on Portland. I think Portland is a pretty easy fade right now for me. I'm going to be well underweight. I could see if news hits right that a Duop Reef could make sense, but I'm good on this slate. On the Knicks side of the ball, I agree with a lot of the Hartenstein takes. Don't mind him. I don't mind Julius Randle as a spend, but to be fair, there's other spends I just like. I think I like some of these spend-up guards. I think I like some of these other spend-up forwards. And I'll admit, there's some bias there on the Julius Randle train. Not a huge Julius Randle guy. I don't mind Josh Hart as a cheaper punt at 4.8K. It is a little bit of a Josh Hart revenge game, so you got that going for you. And he does fit this game environment well, right? If I told you sloppy team, grind it out, also could get the blowout run as well, right? He's one of those guys they could leave in the fourth quarter. If the game is kind of a blowout, they could leave him in there to close still. So I don't hate Josh Hart's value. And then I really like Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson is a super safe option. Now, if the game doesn't stay close, it could be because Brunson blew them out. But to be fair, if Portland makes this game competitive, and if Portland makes it competitive, I could see routes where Portland players are not on the winning lineup no matter what, just because of the pricing of these guys and how crowded it is. Jalen Brunson could have 50 or 60 DK points. And yes, Alex, I do agree. He does leave his starters out, which is a bump for guys like Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, if you want to make that case as well. So I think the Knicks are solid plays. I don't think they're like this smash spot, but I think if you're ignoring the Knicks on this slate, I think you're just making a mistake. I don't think you want to completely ignore them. I think between these studs and some of these mid-tier guys, I think getting Knicks on your team is not a bad idea.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to kind of mention BG3 mentioned what about Sharp coming off 40 minutes. It is worth noting, Portland had a overtime game last time out, so minutes are slightly inflated. It was good to see that Sharp had 14 shots. It was still 10 and 11 less shots than Grant and Anthony Simons. They shot 24 and 25 times. So it's pretty clear that when he is out on the court, he's still the third option. And as much as I like Shaedon Sharp's game, it just feels like he's a little bit expensive to be like a third option. Like 5,700 is not terrible, but coming off the bench, you're behind Simons. You got to compete with, even guys like Brogdon and stuff in that team where I just don't love it. But under 6K, I think it's okay, but definitely better spots here on this slate. We also had one other thing too. Who was it? It was. No, I guess we had nothing. No, it was the OG. Mangone's an OG. It was the OG can't score with this team. And you can sit in a corner and get 15 to 18. I mean, it's not absurd to just imagine that you're just going to get some threes. He's not going to create
Rubio, you're not playing OG for his scoring. You're playing for his stock upside, right? Like, that's the real reason you're playing it for. I'm not playing OG against, like, Luka, right? Where it's like the ball handling is going to be good and less turnovers. Like, you don't want to play OG against someone like Tyrese Halliburton. You want to play him in the sloppy games like the Wizards, the Portland Trailblazers. Like, that's where you see the ceiling performances.
The big Scoot Henderson bump. I love that. That was a great line. Mateo is trying to feed another winner. Do you want to give another bets pick winner out, Mateo? What's he saying? What's Mateo saying?
I think he's saying that he likes OG Anunoby.
Oh, he wants the props on OG Anunoby? All right, I'm in. All right, let's get on the props.
I think he's an OG guy today.
I love it. I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the props here while we go to the favorite game of the day.
Real quick, Ruby, I did want to ask you this because someone talked about Hartenstein being the nuts. And I think this is a good segue to the Marcus Smart conversation. If I told you had to pick one or the other, someone asked me this today. It wasn't you. I know we talked on the phone a lot today, but it wasn't you. Hartenstein or Smart, they're the same price. Who would you take? Because I think that's like a really good DFS conversation today.
Hartenstein, because he's literally lefty Jokic.
What about you, Bryce? Would you? Because I think Marcus Smart is the chalk, but I also think Hartenstein is a super contrarian play.
Give me Hart at like half the owner, or Hartenstein at half the ownership. Straight up, like in a cash game situation, I would probably play Smart over him, but like in GPP, like I'll probably have him like about the same amount.
Yeah, I thought that was a good conversation point I wanted to bring up because someone asked me it and I was like, that is tough because Hartenstein's price at 6'3" feels rough, but also Marcus Smart, when you say you're getting a starting point guard and like the good value spot with John Moran out, you kind of want to gravitate that way. I think it's just a good conversation.
This Memphis game also just went down a penny, so maybe we're getting some news soon or something. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm kind of expecting Jaren Jackson to sit here. So like it's really hard for me to be under on the Memphis guys, like especially like their big men. They're going to have to fill those minutes. So be ready for the late swap if we don't get it before lock. I kind of think we're going to get it around 6:30, and I kind of hope we don't. But
Yeah, it's a very interesting slate for that reason. And speaking of segues, like Mangone said, we can go from Isaiah Hartenstein and Marcus Smart into this game here, the Memphis Grizzlies at the Dallas Mavericks. Mangone, since you were so eager to talk about, Marcus Smart and segues and Paul Blart, go ahead and talk to me about this amazing Memphis value that we have. And then are you going to run it back with any Mavericks, like potentially Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, I do think Memphis is a huge conversation point on this slate, right? And of course, we're waiting for the Jaren Jackson news. That's going to be key. Maybe we'll get it soon. Maybe we won't. We normally get some news at 5:30. It's typically for 7 o'clock games, but sometimes we get more news that files in. One thing that might happen too, Rubio, this is, I think, worth talking about the slate. You might be sitting watching the Up the Lock show with JSU, Holden, and the cast of characters that are on. And when you're watching the show, might be 10 minutes before, you might find out Jaren Jackson Jr. is out, right? And like, if that happens, that's going to really force you to make decisions on what do I do with Killian Hayes? Do I lock into him? Do I lock into Jaden Ivey, who we discussed, Bogdanovich, all these different plays early on? So I don't have the answer for you, but I think this is something you have to have in the back of your brain. You got to just stay calm, cool, and collective and kind of figure out what is the decision you're going to make based on that. Try your best to run whatever you can. And that's why the Up the Lock show helps you out with that. So I think that's super important. Also, Jaren Jackson can get ruled in and be lower owned. So I think this is a good Jaren Jackson Jr. spot if he is in. But there are other good plays in that price range where you can just make a case that I don't need to go there. I do think this is a good spot for Desmond Bane at 8.5, either with or without Jaren Jackson Jr. I like Desmond Bane in this spot. I think he's a good play at 8.5K. The only argument you can make is if you play someone like Desmond Bane, well, maybe that hurts your ability to get some of these contrarian studs that you can get to tonight. Kind of like I talked about yesterday. Like I loved playing Giannis and Middleton and Porzingis and White. They're all going to have ownership, and it doesn't help me to be able to get one of maybe those contrarian studs. But Desmond Bane is clearly, in my opinion, the best spend up Grizzly, even if you put Marcus Smart in that spend up conversation. Like I would say of the core three, I think they're the best. Now from the values, I saw someone in the chat mention this, and I think we should call it out. Isn't Roddy a lock if Jaren Jackson Jr. is out and Stone min 3K? I don't know who's starting. I don't think David Roddy is starting. If you told me David Roddy was starting at 3K, sure. He would be, but we don't know if he is. I don't think he is. I think you're going to see Vince Williams Jr. or Zaire Williams being the two. I think it's going to be Vince Williams Jr. if I had to pick. And I like Vince Williams Jr.'s game. I think he is a really solid player. He kind of has a nice 3-and-D role on this team, but he's also one of those players that when he's given the opportunity to actually showcase and get usage, he's actually pretty good. Like, this isn't the best example, but like a little bit of Mikal Bridges in him, maybe like a way lighter version of like, he can just do more. Everyone is going to assume he's a 3-and-D guy, but he does way more. I like him a lot. I think he's going to grow and become a pretty solid player in the league. Not Mikal Bridges like, but I think he's just, it's a light version of it. And I truly do think he's a good play. Zaire Williams, I don't mind at 3.62. Those are the two guys that everyone's keying in on. Now, Luke Kennard isn't the worst idea. If he gets hot, he'll definitely be in there and be able to have a pretty nice role. So I don't mind him. He's probably my third favorite value in that game. If Bismack Biyombo is starting, you can make a case for him. I don't really have a huge opinion on him. My opinion will probably form once I know the Jaren Jackson Jr. news. And another thing that I think could happen that I don't think everyone else is thinking is, what if Bismack Biyombo doesn't start? I think there's a realistic world where Xavier Tillman starts. He started a game recently. I also could see a route where between the combination of Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane, they might want to have another usage type of guy to start the game off. And I just think Xavier Tillman is way more in play to start than people might think. I bet you no one's really talking about him today. And that could be a guy that you get late as a value that you might want to make a pivot to at 3.9K. So I just say don't completely ignore the Xavier Tillman play if he starts. I'm not saying plan for in your lineups, but I think that matters. Someone asked, can you play Zaire and Vince Williams Jr. together? I think you can. I'd be curious to get Bryce's take on that when he gets there. The final thoughts I got to get in here is Luka's a great play at 11.5. We have the value to do it, like you just mentioned, with Vince Williams Jr. and Zaire Williams. Other than that, though, am I dying to play anyone else in the Mavericks? Not really. It's mainly, do I want to play Luka because I have enough value and I can just get Luka, right? That's the key. And I also don't think it's a spot to just jam in Luka and just say he's the best play. Keep in mind, there's a lot of really good studs on this slate. I think you could make the case that you don't need to jam Luka, and you could play, like, let's say your combination was like Luka and like a 5K guy, or like Pascal Siakam and Jalen Brunson, or like Pascal and I don't know, like Julius Randle, right? There's just a case to be made for that, grabbing the two guys rather than the one of Luka.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When you mention it too, I mean, this Dallas team isn't like someone that you need to have two bigs out there. And they just started Xavier Tillman and Jaren Jackson Jr. And there was a good chance that Xavier Tillman wasn't going to start anyway, if Jaren was in. But now that, it could be trending that Jaren could be out, we don't know. Up to lock show, code New Year or New Year 15, whichever one works. 15% off your first purchase here at Run Pure Sports. Also, hit that like button. We need to get to 125 to be able to give a play of the day. We're only at 69. Nice. But we need more, guys. So more, 125. We'll give out our plays of the day. Bryce, when I look at this team, I'm kind of in agreement with Mangone. I think that you could see Vince Williams potentially get the starting nod if Jaren is out. And I do think that Tillman or Biyombo start. The good thing about it, though, is that if you go Biyombo, you can just directly pivot to Tillman. You don't have to really worry about that. But if you plan for it the other way around, then maybe things get a little bit hairy. But go ahead and talk about this amazing Memphis value a little bit more. And are you running back with Luka as well?
Yeah, I mean, Luka and Kyrie are like kind of the two guys you would want on Dallas, obviously. Don't really love their secondary pieces just because it's them two and then everyone else. I'd rather just play extra in the Memphis value at this point. I think Zaire and Vince are the two best plays on the slate. And, if Jaren Jackson's out, they would become, I don't ever lock two guys from the same team. So I would go with Zaire over Vince over Zaire. I just think I think they trust him a little bit more. I think his minutes would be a little less fragile. But if Jaren Jackson's out, and I'm expecting Santi to sit too because he's listed as doubtful, like I would see personally Vince Williams stepping into the starting lineup. In which case, I mean, it's really hard to fade him at 3-6 starting. So, the question for me is whether I build with Jaren Jackson in or Jaren Jackson out, like from the start. I'm probably going to build with him in just because it's way easier to swap like down from him. And then you would just get more studs in the later games, which I'm totally fine getting like a little bit extra at Luka, a little bit extra Kyrie, a little bit extra to these Lakers guys, even a little bit extra Toronto without Podol. I think the Podol news is going to go a little overlooked on this slate here. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sit here. You can't sit here and tell you guys that Memphis guys are bad plays. So, I'm going to be very heavy on a lot of them. I would personally expect Tillman to start over Biyombo, but I'm also anticipating having to late swap some stuff on this slate as well. So, like, just doing a QPR from like, if you don't want to go through the late swapping stuff, like definitely plan for Biyombo because you can just QPR down to Tillman if he starts. But yeah, I agree with your take that like they might feel they need a little bit more scoring. The Mavericks, I think Tillman matches up better against the Mavericks than Biyombo does anyways. Tillman scores well when he's in. I mean, but he also carries a ton of risk. Like he started last game and played 3 minutes. Obviously, like you won't have the Jaren Jackson center minutes today if he's out. So like that mitigates some of that risk, but just something to keep in mind here. Overall in this game, I would rank, or at least from the Memphis side of the ball, I would rank the plays in terms of like how much I'm going to have of them. Vince Williams 1, Zaire Williams 2, Marcus Smart and Bane 3 and 4. And then the centers below that, I could see Kennard. I'm definitely going to have a decent amount of as well. And, Roddy's 3K. If Jaren Jackson's in, Roddy's not going to start. I'm going to have 0 Roddy. If Jaren Jackson's out, I think he becomes a viable play at 3K.
It makes sense there. It'll definitely be important to keep track on what the Jaren Jackson news is going to play out like. I was hoping that update was the one that gave us the answer, but oh no, we can wait on, and waiting is probably best for us if you have the tools and the ability to late swap here as well, which we do here at SaberSim and much more here at Run for Your Sports with your subscription. Again, we need 125 likes to give out the play of the day. We're about 36 short, so make sure to hit that like button, please. Greatly appreciate it. We'll make sure to give our plays of the day at the end of this. We have one game left. This one also has a huge showdown prize pool attached to it, a 200K pool, 50K to first on DraftKings, and I believe it's 50K pool on FanDuel. This game has a little bit of news. The one biggest noteworthy thing is that Jakob Poeltl is out. What you can expect potentially is that it's a big boost to guys like Chris Boucher, and Jonte Porter could potentially be there to size up against Anthony Davis as well. I wrote about it in the Showdown playbook, how I mentioned that I could see Jonte Porter getting the start, potentially just bodying up Anthony Davis for maybe 6 minutes, 7 minutes each, in a couple stints, maybe taking 20 minutes. But that still should leave plenty of room for a guy like Chris Boucher to potentially, make an impact on this game. He is definitely one of the higher graded values on this slate. And at 4,500, he also gives you power forward and center ability too. With the Lakers, you got your LeBron, your Anthony Davis. Outside of those two guys, the last game was absolutely a nightmare for almost everyone else. But you do get Austin Reeves at 7-4. Bryce, we're going to start with you here. Go ahead and give your take on what the potential starting lineup looks like for the Raptors here with Pirtle out, and what do you expect? How much do you like the Lakers tonight, I should say?
I like the Lakers studs a decent amount. I like Siakam a decent amount in this spot. If I'm playing, give a quick showdown rundown here, just because the contest is so nice tonight. I'd play 4 captains here. I would play Siakam, and I would play Scotty Barnes, and then on the Lakers, I would play LeBron and AD. I simply never go cheap captains in Showdown. Like last night, it was like a Zubac captain team that won. 8% Zubac captain is absurd to me. Like I had plenty of him in the flex. I'm never playing him a captain on a Clippers slate. It's going to be the 3 main guys in the Clippers. He gets there way less than 8% of the time a captain in that game. I only played 5. You only play the studs there. So those are the 4 best plays in this game by far, I think. Next, I'd rank it. I like Boucher. Even if he doesn't start, he's such a high fantasy point per minute guy that like he can get there off the bench. They could start Porter, so he's not getting into foul trouble. I don't hate that take, and I wouldn't dock a ton from him. I think the bigger question here is how many center minutes does Siakam soak up? Like, I think the industry is kind of over projecting Siakam's like role playing center here. I don't like the Lakers are kind of a tough team for him to match up like as a center against. So I kind of see it more Porter and more Boucher. So yeah, I think the industry is giving like Siakam like around 10 minutes at center almost, which I think is simply too high. I think the only way that would happen is like, I don't know, say they're closing the game out and like the team is playing really well with him at center, like they might keep it, but I kind of see him playing more of his normal 4 role here, and the other guys taking the minutes. Lakers secondary pieces, I don't really have any interest in outside of Austin Reeves. I'll play some Reeves, but there's just such good value. You don't need to play like a Max Christie type of guy here on the slate, I think.
Awesome. Again, we're about 18 likes away, guys. Come on, let's get those likes up. I know there's 352 of you watching. Surely 20 of you haven't clicked the like button yet. So go ahead and hit that like button before we get to Mangone's takes on this game. Bryce, you kind of mentioned it too. I mean, 10 minutes for Siakam at center, you would have to assume that those are all without like Anthony Davis there playing the 5. And it's not like that the Lakers are going small. Christian Wood has also been getting a bunch of minutes too for that showdown slate for later on. There's a lot of good builds. I think for the first time, I'm actually happy. The first time in a while, I'm actually happy with the way DraftKings priced a showdown slate. They've gotten really lazy this season, allow you to fit almost anyone you want. They might have fluked into it with Jakob Poeltl's injury, but it is definitely a great slate. We have a full showdown playbook and cores on the site for later tonight. I'm sure that there will be some stuff in the Discord as well. Mangone, we just heard Bryce's takes on the Raptors and Lakers. What do you think here?
Yeah. Also, you said earlier in the show, if you kind of showed up late, we're giving away some free NBA League Pass stuff on Playback. So be sure to sign up for Playback tonight. We'll be tweeting it out on the Twitter account. So be sure to check that out, and you can get some free League Pass stuff and hit that like so we can give out those plays days for you guys. But yeah, this last game is definitely one to not ignore. I do think you can ignore the Lakers' values. We could just say right out the gate, I'm not really liking to play in these Lakers values. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think Anthony Davis and LeBron are really the guys that are in play. Austin Reeves at 7-4, I don't need to get to him. It's really just LeBron or AD as Spence. That's the thing that I would consider. Then from there, how do we handle Toronto? I think there's a lot of different paths this could go. I sort of agree, Rubio. Like Porter could start, right? But also Porter could not close, and they could close their lineups with a Pascal Siakam and then Chris Boucher at the 4, right? There's a lot of different ways it can go. So think about that when you're kind of allocating minutes. Like I talked about in the Bucks last night. I didn't think that they would just allocate everything to the guards for sure. Now they did, and they got like guys like Green involved a little bit more. But I just think you could see the allocation of minutes with big men. Some of the projections have Boucher at one spot, and you might want to up that or lower it based on it, or same with Porter. You might see Porter's projection and go, that's too high. I don't think he gets that many minutes, and then adjust it down, right? That's a big decision point that you have to make. My lean is adjusting more on liking Boucher over Porter if I have to pick one. I know they're not the same position in price, but that's just where I lean. When it comes to these other options, one guy that's popping a little bit, and I think it's popping for good reason, is one, the Lakers, not good at defending the three ball and guards. Gary Trent Jr., I think he's popping a little bit for a reason. I don't think it's the craziest idea to play him at 4.4K. I like the Memphis values better than him, but I understand why he is popping a bit, and I think he could gain more minutes than the field might be thinking. So I like him. I like Pascal Siakam over Scotty Barnes if I have to pick one. I think Scotty Barnes is an interesting contrarian tournament spend, but I think there's a lot of different spends you can go up there. I just won't get the Scotty Barnes today. I prefer Pascal Siakam. That would be the guy I'd go to. And then one guy that's kind of like a plug and play, don't mind kind of option is it's just Emmanuel Quickly, right? If I fall on Emmanuel Quickly, I'm happy with it. I'm fine, but I'm not going out and just saying this guy's an elite play. You have to play him. It's one of those things when you kind of like build your teams. You look and you go, oh, I got like 40% Emmanuel Quickly. I'm fine with that. Or maybe like when you look at your like single entry team, you love everything in like the last spot in the utils Quickly. You're like, oh, that's perfect. It's not just some gross play that you're not comfortable with, right? So I like Quickly. I feel like he won't burn your teams. And I think his floor ceiling combination is pretty good against the Lakers. So I'd rank it Siakam 1, Quickly 2, Gary Trent 3, and then Boucher 4. With the way that I'd probably be rostering these guys on this slate. Obviously, I like Scotty Barnes way more than Chris Boucher. Point I'm getting at is trying to think from a value perspective how I would rank these Raptors out.
It's funny enough. I mean, since the arrival of Emmanuel Quickly, it's been like a fire was lit under Schroeder's feet where he's just been balling out the past few games. And this is also, Mangone, I'm surprised you didn't mention it, a revenge game. You know, Dennis Schroeder revenge here against the Los Angeles Lakers. It is viable on Showdown. I do have a little bit of Schroeder builds. He's in that really awkward range, and you can even do it stack with Quickly because they haven't been not correlating together. When Quickly has had a big game, Schroeder is capable of having a big game with him. So just food for thought there on that slate there late on. I definitely think Schroeder's an okay final piece, but not someone I'm going to go out of my way on the main slate. You also had a comment here about Luka may not play tonight, and he's probable. They do have the questionable tag on DK, but he's probable tonight. I definitely think he gives it a full go. Scotty Barnes also, with the arrival of Quickly and Barrett, has kind of taken a slight backseat. Love to see the shots kind of go up, but the past 3 games, he has not seen above 15 shots after shooting like 24, 20, and 17 times when he played that point guard role. So just food for thought there, but I think you guys summed it up perfectly. It is 5:40. We have covered all the games, and I think that we hit the number that we had to hit for the likes. So let's go ahead and give our plays of the day. Bryce, you'll go first. Who is your play of the day on tonight's NBA slate?
I will go with De'Aaron Fox. Talked about like really wanting to be over him on our segment for this game. I think it's an elite spot for him. I think he goes way over owned if he comes in at 5 or under owned if he comes in the 5% projection that we have on him.
Love it. De'Aaron Fox. Mangone, you look like you're trying to look for your play of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and stall for an extra second or two.
Yeah, you talked to me today. You know Fox is my guy. So, yeah, give me.
You just got to swing. Wow, Bryce just swiped Mangone's play of the day.
Wow.
Mangone is rattled. Look at this. Mangone is completely rattled right now. You know, we can give him some time. I mean, it's a big deal to play of the day. Because when Mangone gets,
how about you give yours? We can't have Travis over here all sad.
I'll figure one out. Don't worry, I'll figure one out. So yeah, well, actually, by the way, we just got news. Kevin Huerter is starting. So if you care about that, that's it's not nothing.
I think it was kind of planned for in the projection since he was wearing the starter jersey in practice or the shoot around, whatever it was, but. I'm glad that you stalled that way because, the host goes last and you're giving a play of the day, Bryce. That's not a tradition that we can break. Mangone, who is your play of the slate?
Man, you go first. Everybody, I need a second. I don't know who to go right. I don't want to give like the chalkiest play in the world, but yeah.
He's so rattled.
Yeah. I am very rattled. I'm very tilted by it. It's
Bryce, you're camped up rent free in his head right now. He can't get out of there. All right, screw it. We'll break tradition. This is fun. This is great. My play of the day, Jalen Duren. I think that he comes out firing. I think that they're going to get him the rock. Stock's upside is there. I just don't think the Kings are completely there, and I think a lot of these Pistons do work. But Duren is one of my favorite ones on the slate. So we got the Aaron Fox, we got Jalen Duren, we got a little stack brewing. Mangone, are you finally ready?
Yeah, I mean, I like this guy a lot. It might be tough to put him with the Aaron Fox is one of the worries. It's similar to the Duren thing that you had. I'm going to go with Bojan Bogdanovic. I think it's a really good spot for Bogdanovic. I like his minutes. Listen, if they get blown out, yeah, Bogdanovic is probably not going to play enough minutes. But if the game is competitive and close, Bogdanovic is helping with that, right? So he's a nice forward option. I'll go with him at 6.7K.
Bryce, I was really in between on Bojan and Duren. I really wish I went Bojan now so we could rattle Mangone's cage a little bit more. Thank you all for watching. We're going to get that Grizzlies news here. Hopefully in the next hour, we have the Up the Lock show with JSU, Holden, and a cast of friends. I believe it's Big T tonight too. So make sure to get in. We have playback later tonight. It's free to watch, 9 o'clock. I'm sure that they're going to go over a lot of the Showdown takes as well. Bryce, it sounds like you're going to be hopping on, sweating some live bets too. It's going to be a great time. We're also giving away 25 NBA League Pass subscriptions for free. Check our Twitter. I'll probably have the tweet out at 8:30 or 8:45, so that way you can set up. It's free. It's easy to set up. Just make sure that you can watch some of the games. All you need to do is put in your cable information, and voila, you can live watch the games with the guys. So should be a great time. Again, thank y'all for watching. Have a great rest of y'all's day, and good luck.